Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome to Straight Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I'm well, Mr. Solomon. I see we got the memo and decided to wear, well, I'm wearing red. I think yours is a bit more burgundy, but it looks very good nonetheless. We're
Definitely in the same hue.
Yes, I was just going to say that. We are in the same hue today. Trust you had a good day?
I did. It was productive.
Yes.
Yeah. Today is one of those setup days, where it's like I'm getting everything because I'm about to pounce tomorrow.
Are you?
And actually get the real deeds done. Okay. But yeah, it was a productive day.
So it was a good hump day then, was it?
Yeah.
It's hump day. It's Wednesday.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So it makes sense that you're pouncing tomorrow.
Hump today and settle right in tomorrow, shall we?
There you go. Well, good evening to the listening audience. As always, it's our pleasure to be broadcasting again for another day, reminding you Straight Talk airs every weekday evening from 4:30 to 6:30 on 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook with the key search words Straight Talk Radio Show if you're looking for us and haven't already added us to your favorites. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. It's going to be another day of open mic where we discuss the issues together with you, the listening audience. And the phone lines are open. 745-2626 is the number in studios if you want to call in and be a part of the conversation. Or you can also reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, you can either share a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. And for completeness, if email is your preferred method of communication, you can also email us at host@straighttalk.ky. Got a bit of good news on the agenda today. Hopefully today I will actually get it right, Ellio, because yesterday I was having, again, the beginning of a new week dilemma. What day is it today?
I'm looking forward to another one of those clownfish jokes.
Well, funny enough, I was looking for jokes this afternoon, and I came across a number of them. But when I tell you, my friend, that they were corny,
yeah,
they were incredibly corny. I must have sifted through.
Not as good as my cat joke, is what you're trying to tell me?
Certainly not as good as I never knew my father.
There you go.
Not that joke.
Not that good.
And of course, I did like the one, of the old engine block and the goat diving headfirst in the hole. But I couldn't find anything that made me chuckle. And I know if it doesn't make me chuckle, then there's a fat chance that you're going to chuckle.
They just don't make them the way they used to.
They just don't make them the way they used
What's
to.
What's the world coming to?
I don't know, buddy. I don't know. We have to launch a complaint somewhere.
Yeah.
But good thing is we have a bunch of good news in which we can talk about, so it's really not a joke day today. But a big shout out to those members of the listening audience who have, let's just say, they have communicated with us, thanking us for giving them something to laugh and chuckle about on their long drive
There you
home.
go. That's encouraging.
They shall remain nameless, but we thank you nonetheless. We hear you and we appreciate you. Well, today across the globe is International Maritime Day. As a matter of fact, Day of the Seafarer is being celebrated this week around the globe in honor of the vital work seafarers do in supporting the global economy and local communities. And whilst I did sort of, mess this up yesterday, I'm going to try to, make amends by correcting it today. The Seafarers Registry launch will be taking place today, Wednesday, the 25th of June, at the Constitution Hall in Georgetown, Grand Cayman. That is the old Georgetown Town Hall located on 4th Street, just behind the town clock. for anyone who might be interested.
You see, you laugh at me, but I'm telling you. And I know this because we had meetings there.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm talking from experience here,
You
Mr.
called
Hart.
it Constitution Hall, people got lost.
You say,
where is that?
We're in the Constitution Hall. And people are thinking, I don't know if I can fly to England today.
Are you sure that's in Cayman?
Yeah, they don't know that. You got to be to the town hall, bro.
The Georgetown Town Hall.
Yeah,
That's right.
the building built in 1919, tucked neatly behind the clock.
There you go. There you go. So, to my colleague's point, not wanting anyone to get lost or perhaps scratch their head talking to, what is their weather? Not the weather, their Maps app, Syria or somebody else.
Constitution Hall. Typing it in.
Yes, quite right. The Georgetown Town Hall on 4th Street at 5:30 this evening for the Voices of the Sea Seafarers Registry launch being put on in part by Celebrate Cayman. For those persons who are still downtown, whilst we hate to draw you away from our riveting program, certainly in honor of our seafarers, we will make an exception today.
Correct.
We also have the first 2025 Atlantic storm of the 2025 hurricane season, but the good news is it is far, far, far away from the Cayman Islands. Tropical storm Andrea is located 1,200 miles west of the Azores and became the first storm of the season on Tuesday, forming in a remote part of the central Atlantic, far north of the tropical waters that usually fuel such storms. But for those consummate hurricane and tropical storm trackers out there, Andrea is moving towards the east at about 17 miles per hour, packing winds of up to nearly 40 miles per hour with higher gusts. But it is expected to be short-lived. Forecasters don't expect it to turn into anything considerable, certainly not like what I think it was Hurricane Eric on the Pacific side, also formed early in the year, but thankfully that's the Pacific, Mexico way. But yes, in the Atlantic, that's our first storm, but the good news of the day is that it's nowhere near us, and certainly we walk away with great news. But we do have, locally, some rain in the forecast, potentially over tonight and tomorrow. Taking a look at the Cayman Islands National Weather Service forecast and synopsis, we see, or should I say we read, residual moisture from a tropical wave across the Bay of Honduras will continue to spread cloudy conditions with some showers through tonight. A secondary tropical wave located across Jamaica is expected to drift across the Western Caribbean overnight, continuing chances for some showers through until Thursday afternoon. Thereafter, a gradual decrease in cloud coverage and showers can be expected as fresh winds and our favorite Saharan dust spread across our area. Radar images showed numerous showers with isolated thunderstorms in and around the Cayman area moving towards the west-northwest. So tonight, we can expect cloudy skies with periods of rain and isolated thunder showers. Temperatures will fall to the upper 70s. Winds will be out of the east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Tomorrow, you might want to pack your umbrella just in case. We expect partly cloudy skies becoming cloudy at times in the morning with a 40% chance of shower and possible thunder. So your morning drive may be a wet one. We can only hope, right? Temperatures will rise to the low 90s with a heat index of near, it's bad when the National Weather Service doesn't even give you a heat index. I've got / Fahrenheit. So that is their way of saying it's going to be very warm or at least humid.
I like how your eyes lit up. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, they lit up, and that's not a positive thing.
I thought of a hurricane joke, by the way.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let me finish the weather.
Go ahead.
Tomorrow, winds will be east to southeast to 15 to 20 knots. Seas will be moderate to rough with wave heights of 4 to 6 feet, and small craft should exercise caution over the open water. So we got some rain in the forecast tonight and tomorrow, but the good news is that it might tend to go, the bad news, I suppose, is expected to reduce by Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening, but let's enjoy it while it lasts. Ellio, your hurricane joke.
That was pretty funny when you said, let me finish the weather.
Let me finish the weather. Come on.
Anyway.
Patience.
Because I'm dying to hear that joke, Ellio. All I was thinking about when you said the first name of the hurricanes, my thoughts went very quickly to Elon Musk and said, I'm so happy Elon's not involved in the naming of hurricanes.
I tell you,
We get some weird names, right?
Well, you don't know. I mean, we're at Andrea as the start of our hurricane season, so the E is kind of far off. So you never know. It might be Hurricane Elon. Or
No, I'm saying,
Hurricane Ellio.
I'm saying no.
We
I hope
got
not.
a Disney movie after Ellio, so we should have Hurricane Ellio.
I hope not. I hope you don't have a Hurricane Ellio.
I hope not either.
Either way.
You never live it down.
The bottom line is that I'm saying, good thing he's not naming the hurricanes. Because, he always gives some weird names. I mean, turn Twitter to X.
Yeah.
His son has some weird name that I don't know, what is that, like X-1 or I don't know, something weird.
He's not weird. He's rich, so therefore he's eccentric.
Oh, yeah, I forget. We give money special names.
Rich people aren't weird. They're just considered eccentric.
Yeah.
Yes, their wealth gives them a different distinction.
Like it has
the
special smell, right?
Well,
fragrance.
He's got something. He's got something.
Well, I don't care how much money he has. I can tell you right now that I like some of his creations, but not the names.
No, indeed.
No, I can't agree with him on that one there.
Not at all. In more good news, the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service has launched a 2-week road safety campaign aimed at reducing dangerous driving behavior. Bravo, well done, congratulations. This is long overdue. Operation Clyro, as it is called, will see an increased police presence on our roads between the 23rd of June, which is when it began earlier this week, and will end on the 7th of July. Officers will specifically target key violations that contribute to accidents and fatalities in Grand Cayman on the sister islands. Our goal with Operation Clyro is to enhance safety of all road users in the Cayman Islands, said Acting Chief Inspector Fernando Soto in a press release on the 22nd of June. I like Inspector Soto. He's a good guy. I know he's a hard worker. Big shout out to Chief Inspector Soto.
I'm joining you.
The primary focus.
So this is in Cayman Brac?
This is here, Grand Cayman, as well as on the sister islands, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. So again, a road
what
safety.
traffic do you have in Little Cayman?
I don't know.
Iguanas or what?
It says sister islands, so I will include both. But who knows? Careful. You got a wayward, veering off the road golf cart. Doing a whole 30 miles an hour, breaking the law. I don't know. The primary focus areas for enforcement during this period will include driving under the influence, speeding, poor driving behavior, which includes dangerous maneuvers, reckless driving, distracted
texting
driving.
while driving. That would be the distraction area.
Yeah, which includes mobile phone use and disregarding traffic signals. Other road violations include seatbelt infractions, expired registration, unlicensed driving, and other vehicle defects that might not be considered part of the road code or part of your vehicle roadworthiness standards. Again, the Royal Cayman Islands Police will be across the Cayman Islands, and certainly you can expect to see an increased presence all the way until the 7th of July. Certainly, Ellio, I think this is the good news. I think it's welcome news by many persons in the public who oftentimes say you never see a cop when you need one. There have been a rash of road vehicular accidents. I hate to say it, but most of them involve the Honda Fit. Not blaming the cars, blaming some of the drivers. Maybe they need to go to driving school themselves. But, I don't want to taint the good news with constructive criticism, but I'm going to do it anyway. We both know from former commissioners who said every police officer is a traffic cop.
See how you have that smile on your face? That's how you tell a joke. See, I'm laughing already. I don't even know what you're going to say.
Go ahead. Every police officer is a traffic police officer, according to, I think, 3 police commissioners ago, maybe even 4. They said that particularly when the traffic department was officially disbanded. Now, at the time, we were dealing with an increase, an uptick in violent crime, gang-related crime, and we needed more boots on the ground to quell that violence. So the RCIPS basically recruited from in the traffic department to put them out on the roads in various capacities. And so went the otherwise unified traffic department the way of the dodo. But when you consider the number of traffic accidents, when you consider the number of speeding events, again, we mentioned the Honda Fit just as an example. I think we're up to 10, maybe 11 for the year, and we're still in June. You know, it really does ask the question, why don't we have or at least bring back a dedicated traffic unit? Because very clearly it is in need. And whilst we praise the RCIPS for Operation Clyro, again, we ask the question.
I thought we did have a traffic unit.
Well, it
used to be out there. It used to use that office opposite
Jose's
Rubus.
Yeah.
Now, you know what question I have, right, is a lot of times they'll pull you over and say you're not licensed. And you get a ticket, but they don't really check to see how roadworthy your car is. So it's obviously not an issue of roadworthiness.
Right.
It's an issue of you owe the government some money.
You owe me some money.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, like,
and I'm going to charge you extra for, not having your tags up to date, not having insurance, things like that.
Well, yeah.
And I'm going to send you to court just for good measure.
They do that, but it's not like they're saying, press the brake, turn the light on. I've never seen that.
No.
It's just you get a ticket, your car is not licensed.
Well, they say they're going to be looking at vehicle defects as part of Clyro. So maybe someone somewhere heard your thoughts and said, you know what? We better not annoy Ellio, and we better include.
I doubt it, but
so that we can make sure he says only good things about us on the radio.
And then we big up Mr. Soto.
And we big up Mr. Soto. Listen. Fernando Soto's a good guy. I like him. He's a nice guy.
He's good by you. He's good by me.
See, there you go. Trust me, I would never lead you astray. He's a solid police officer, obviously rising to the ranks of chief inspector when I knew him. Well, he wasn't of that high rank, but certainly, it was no surprise to me that he would one day attain it. Right. He's certainly a quality human being, and Officer Soto, if you're out there, got nothing but love for you, brother.
Nothing
but love for you.
I join him. You. So what happened to the Royal Cayman Police? They had went to there was some that went to some Caribbean island to aid in the gang wars or something.
Yeah, not a few months ago, I think that was.
I never heard of them coming back. I hope they came back.
I didn't. Very good point. Let me just check.
Of course, granted, there's a lot of things that fall into a.
Let's see.
Oblivious.
Yeah, back on the 27th of May, the Royal Cayman Islands police officers sent 8 officers to Anguilla to tackle their escalating issues in serious crime.
So what happened to the feedback?
I don't know, buddy. That's a very good question. There hasn't been any stories since published that they have returned. Let's see if the article talks about a return date. Blah, 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 blah.
Point of no return.
Blah, blah. No, there's no return.
No return ticket.
No, there was there doesn't even say when the press conference took place. I'm assuming there was a press conference somewhere in the 27th of May-ish, maybe around that week, but no details in terms of when they return.
There you go. Some other information we need from the police.
Yeah, let me just check just one more site just to see if they have any information. No, nobody has any information in terms of when they would return. But the RCIPS said the deployment of officers has been carefully balanced with current staffing levels to ensure that the Cayman Islands community would not be left vulnerable during this period. The community can expect to continue to see high visibility patrols, proactive policing, and sharp professional responses from officers. Okay, if you say so, I believe you. So there you have it. No indication that they came back, but certainly it would be perhaps to your point, something interesting to inquire with the officers whether or not they made it back home safely.
Granted, we're not in the media, as in providing news.
Yeah,
although we probably should, because we used to be back in the day, right?
We did used to be back in the day.
But that's my point, is that back in the day they used to have the regular briefings.
They used to have regular
press briefings was every week, right?
That's right. Because
I remember attending quite a few of those, but you don't see that now. And there just seems to be a lack of information.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. But speaking of press briefings, at the state opening for the new session of Parliament, which is scheduled to take place today.
2 o'clock today.
2 o'clock today, as a matter of fact. So it's probably ongoing right now. The meeting will be held under the new standing orders that were passed at the end of last administration, which will feature and include question time with the Premier for the first time in the Cayman Islands. Obviously, this new order mimics...
style.
Yeah, exactly. It mimics what happens in Westminster all the time with question time for the Prime Minister, it's called, where obviously members of both sides of the House have the opportunity to question the Prime Minister on issues that are important to them and or their constituents. And likewise, I suspect the Premier, Honorable Andre Ebanks, will in fact face some of those questions today. I know the opposition had submitted a number of questions. I think dozens of questions comes to mind. Let's see. There will be a regular 30-minute feature that allows members to ask more general questions about the government performance, and a 15-minute slot for urgent questions will also be available at each sitting. Again, to check out the proceedings of Parliament today, you can log on to YouTube and check out the CIG TV YouTube channel, or as usual, most traditionally, we want to thank Radio Cayman, who have always, since time immemorial, played a replay in the evenings of the parliamentary proceedings, which I don't know if they're going to do it tonight, but I know they certainly have done in the past, and we are grateful for it. But the Parliament of the Cayman Islands is in session as of today. We know, amongst other things, that, matter of fact, I wrote it down. We know that that the amendment to the Public Management and Finance Law will be discussed in Parliament, specifically to extend the date in which the SPS is delivered. Again, as we've talked about, the present law as it stands today requires any new administration to deliver their strategic policy statement within 3 months of being elected, which would have taken us to the 31st of July. But Minister Rolf Sananglin, spokesperson on behalf of the National Coalition for Caymanian Government, stated that that period is just too little time for the new government, particularly the incoming government, to wrap their heads around the issues. So they will seek to have it amended to extend to 6 months only on election years. So, once every 4 years.
Right after an election.
Right after the election, 6 months thereafter. So that amendment will come. Also on the agenda.
Service Management Law?
On the agenda, that'll be an amendment to the Public Management and Finance Law. Yes, you're correct.
But I think there was another one, on the Public Service Management Law. I thought I saw one in there as well.
There may be. I'm only aware of 2 government bills that will be brought. There's the, with 3 minutes left, the Churches Incorporation Amendment Bill 2025, which aims to ensure that churches registered as nonprofit organizations are fully aligned with the registration and governance requirements of the Nonprofit Organization Act by explicitly affirming the nonprofit nature of their activities in the law. The bill enhances transparency, mitigates financial crime risks, and demonstrates the jurisdiction's commitment to best practice regulation in line with international anti-money laundering, counter-financing of terrorism, and counter-proliferation of financing standards. So never did you think your little donations on Sunday would count for so much? Well, now you know.
What you say? As sure as Christ died for the sinners, we don't want anyone smuggling money through the churches. So Churches Incorporation Act, Virtual Asset.
Yes, that's the other one. Yeah, the
Public Management and Finance Act and the Public Service Management Act.
Yeah, they got the next one I had was the Virtual Asset Service Providers Amendment Bill 2025, which pretty much speaks for itself. We're talking about, again, the new world economy of digital currency. This claims to clarify the treatment of tokenized investment funds, such as crypto, where traditional equity or investment interests are digitally represented as part of a blockchain database. We also talked about this a few weeks ago. The proposed amendment will provide needed clarity to tokenized funds with respect to the obligations of the Virtual Assets Service Providers Act. So those are amongst the government bills that will be laid on the table and debated as part of the parliamentary session. Not quite sure whether they'll be done and dusted in one day. I doubt it because, whilst the government will have their way, the opposition must still have their say.
Well, it's just for the first reading, so most likely they won't do any debates today. So
Probably not.
nice
Probably
and short
not.
and sweet.
I was hoping to get a copy of the order paper, but maybe we still might get a copy maybe later this evening into tomorrow. I've reached out to one or two persons. But I'll be honest, I'll be reaching out to the Speaker of the House and seeing if he would be gracious in allowing us to discuss the parliamentary proceedings as they happen. But it is 58 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, and we do have to pause and take a short commercial break. Hopefully, the issue with our service kicking us off 3 seconds early will be resolved, but we're going to find out in a few seconds. Keep it locked. There will be more Straight Talk, particularly Open Mic Wednesday coming up next when Straight Talk continues on Bobo 103.1 FM. Okay, maybe not. Now it's not even spinning over. You got to love it. Well, we're going to continue chatting for a little while until exactly what happens. See, now there's the irony of it all. Yesterday we got kicked out 3 seconds early, and today the countdown clocks now are starting to repeat, and we're still on the air. So,
Bobo. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to top shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes. Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. President Trump has hailed a commitment from NATO allies to raise defence and security spending to 5% of GDP as a monumental win for the United States. But he also called it a big win for Western civilization. Jonathan Beale reports from The Hague.
This was a short NATO summit with a single clear purpose: to deliver on the one thing President Trump has been demanding, that Europe and Canada spend more on their own defence. NATO allies promised to raise defence-related spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. For more than a decade, that target was just 2%. Most European leaders were keen to avoid a rift with the US president, who in the past has raised doubts about America's commitment to allies.
The head of the CIA has backed President Trump's view that the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities caused severe damage. John Ratcliffe said the agency had new, reliable intelligence showing key Iranian nuclear sites had been destroyed. President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, said nuclear enrichment by Iran would remain a red line for the US. But he said he was now hopeful for a comprehensive peace agreement with Tehran. Mr. Trump said US and Iranian officials will meet next week. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said Washington was committed to peace.
We'd love to have peaceful relations with any country in the world. And so obviously that'll depend on Iran's willingness not just to engage in peace, but to negotiate directly with the United States, not through some third country or fourth country process.
Meanwhile, Iran's state media say the government has begun reopening airports in the eastern half of the country as life slowly returns to normal. Internet links have been restored and shops are reopening. The official number of dead from the Israeli attacks has risen above 600. They include the head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards, whose funeral takes place on Thursday. President Zelensky has hailed a new agreement to set up a special tribunal on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying there must be real steps to make it work and hold everyone responsible to account. Addressing parliamentarians at the Council of Europe, where he's just signed the accord, Mr. Zelensky said that every Russian war criminal must face justice, claiming that Vladimir Putin was one of these. He suggested that the Dutch city of The Hague, which hosted the tribunal on former Yugoslav war crimes and is the seat of the International Criminal Court, should also host the Ukraine tribunal.
The crime of aggression must be recorded, judged, and punished. The Hague, perfect venue for it. The Hague is waiting for justice to be delivered.
You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. There's been a day of violent clashes between police and demonstrators in Nairobi and other Kenyan cities as thousands of people took to the streets to mark the anniversary of deadly protests last year. Rights groups and medics say 8 people have been killed and more than 400 injured. Some had gunshot wounds. The authorities are yet to confirm any casualties. Security sources in Nigeria say coordinated attacks by gunmen on several army bases in Niger and Kaduna states earlier this week killed at least 17 soldiers. The military said counterattacks killed a number of the attackers, known locally as bandits. The gunmen belonged to criminal gangs that have terrorized central and northwestern Nigeria for years. The Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has promised legal action to prevent debris from SpaceX rocket launches contaminating her country. Ms. Sheinbaum said officials were working on it with priority.
The
Cabinet is coordinating this work right now because of the impact on environmental security by the launch of these rockets, especially on the state of Tamaulipas. So they're reviewing which international laws are being violated, and from there we will start the legal process, because there is indeed contamination.
Mexican media have carried pictures of suspected rocket debris washed up on beaches south of the border with Texas, including a tank containing dangerous phosphorus. It follows the explosion of a test rocket at the SpaceX base in the US state last week, which sent a huge fireball into the air. A fraudster who tricked British luxury hotels and stores into buying tea that he claimed had been grown in Scotland but was actually from abroad has been jailed for 3.5 years. Thomas Robinson claimed to have specially engineered tea plants that could successfully grow in Scotland's cool and damp climate. But in reality, they had simply been brought in from Italy. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as we continue our discussion today on this Wednesday, the 25th day of June. And it is, again, another open mic day here on the program. The phone lines are open at 745-2626 if you would like to be a part of the conversation. Ellio, of course, we have to start off the 5 o'clock hour on a bit of a somber note, if not, outright bad news. A murder investigation is in the headlines and certainly has been launched by the Royal Criminal Police Service following a fatal shooting that took place on Watercourse Road in West Bay late Monday morning. Officers were dispatched to the scene at around 11:20 a.m. after the 911 communications center received a report of gunfire at a residential address. When officers arrived, they found a man unresponsive, and he was later pronounced dead at the scene. Whilst the victim was not formally identified by police, who said they had notified the family of the suspected victim, on social media, he was identified as one Mr. Joe Bush. A trained family liaison officer was said to have been assigned to support the family during the investigation. Following that investigation, two men aged 38 and 45, both from West Bay, have been arrested on suspicion of murder, and they remain in custody as the investigation continued. The Royal Cayman Islands Police Service has since opened a major incident room to assist with the case and is at the moment urging anyone with information to come forward. Members of the public who saw something are urged to contact the major incident room directly on 649-2930, but anonymous tips may also be submitted via the RCIPS confidential tip line at 949-7777, or they can go online to www.rcips.ky, or they can also make anonymous tips via Cayman Crime Stoppers via their website and mobile app. And just going on the basis of what the street is saying, apparently this was a robbery gone wrong. The street suggests Mr. Bush, the victim, was in possession of a substantial amount of cash, which the individuals took from the man. But why they opted to kill him in the process is still sort of unknown at this time.
Uncooperative, I suppose.
And I suppose when you consider the amount of money that they were otherwise seeking to take from him, probably you might protest as well, but not in the face of a gun, because no amount of money is worth our life, eh?
That should be the case. I want to touch. We talked about the issue earlier about the changes to statutory, or not just statutory, to the standing orders. I'd like to tie that into what's happening with RCIP. At least we have chatted here on the show how things tend to disappear, and where we can appreciate the fact that there needs to be, particularly in light of certain things, a level of confidentiality and caution in terms of what is released, in terms of some of these investigations, so that there's no prejudice. You're not giving information to the person who may have actually committed the crime. And just to spell that out, you'll know, like, let's just say, give a hypothetical case, someone's been murdered and they're found in the bush, God forbid. You have some sickos, for example, that will actually try to claim that they murdered that person, even though they didn't. And the police might be having key pieces of information that only the murderer would know, for example. So even for those psychophonies who are going to come in and say, I'm the one who murdered that person, unless they can give those sort of pieces of information, well, right away, you can pretty much dismiss them. They're not the one who's committed the crime. And I highlight that as an example to say, help us to better understand why clearly there needs to be in many instances, especially some of these fresh investigations, I need to be able to withhold certain pieces of information. But generally speaking, there seems to be, unless it's something I'm totally unaware of, as we talk about press briefings, there seems to be a very limited amount of information that comes out of the Royal Cayman Islands Police. I mean, you brought up the case a couple of days ago about Ms. Anna Evans. Now, clearly, this has been something that has happened years and years ago. You would expect that a lot more information could probably have been given to the public that might help make this cold case a little bit warmer, right? And get something actually started. And I mention that because I think it's important for the public to understand the very fact that you're not having regular press briefings, both perhaps arguably for the government, as in your elected officials, and in this particular instance, the police limits democracy. It limits the information that you, the general public, is getting. And therefore, it makes it that those institutions, those departments are not as responsive to you, the public, who's paying them, as they should be. And to highlight that is precisely the opposite of what is now happening in our parliament. So to walk you through the process, in our parliament before, it was a case of if you were a member of parliament, you wanted to ask the ministers a question on a particular issue, ideally you had to submit that in writing. It kind of went through the sort of normal business committees and got forwarded to the ministers. They kind of decided when they were going to get back to you. Then they got back to you with something that they read on the floor of the House. And there really wasn't much opportunity, unless the speaker was very generous, for a lot of back and forth debate on that.
Yeah.
So this gives the ministers a time, let's put it this way, to massage a lot of things that they're going to say. Gives them time to get clever in terms of how they say it. And therefore, putting it raw, maybe they could hide a few things from the member of parliament and by extension, hiding it from you, the general public.
Yeah.
As my colleague Austin was saying, the government has their way, but the opposition should have their say. And so we want to encourage the opposition to question the government, to hold them accountable. Now, what is happening in Parliament with this new PMQ or whatever, the Premier Question Time, mirroring what happens in the UK, is the fact that now you're going to have this dedicated 30 minutes today on Wednesday.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be something like 15 minutes pretty much on every session, where the leader of the opposition or arguably any member of Parliament can kind of jump to their feet and ask the Premier a question. And he, or in his case, he has to respond spontaneously. Yep. There's no time to sit there and massage it. It means that he has to be very prepared and understand exactly what's happening in his government on just about every issue, arguably. And if not, he looks not too good.
Yeah. And if I can just jump in.
Sure.
Why that's very important is because it differs from the traditional questions to government, which is allowed on every parliamentary sitting, but those questions have to be submitted in advance.
In writing.
Obviously, and in writing. And the purpose for that is, in most cases, the politicians don't have the operational answers to questions being asked, so it gives time for the various ministries to find the answers and therefore have a productive dialogue between the opposition and government members. But to your point, the PMQs operate on a different rule basis.
Right. So the sort of general way it was before is that you simply went ahead, you put it in writing, the question, it went through, and then the relevant minister would get that and have time to respond with a substantive answer that they would read out in Parliament. And like I said, it wasn't normally a lot of back and forth. But that gave them time not only to gather information, collect it, and give a proper answer, but also gives you time to fix a couple of things, right? Like if you got a question that says, Austin, where's my headset?
That's right.
Well, if that headset was in the wrong spot, you could put it in spot because you still got a month and a half to respond, right?
Yes.
And then come down there, well, yes, Madam Speaker, I'm glad the member asked this particular question. I would like.
I have it right here.
I have it right here. but if I was able to answer,
luck would have it.
If I had to answer that question right off the fly.
Yeah.
Where's my headset? Well, no, there's no time for talking, massaging, and hiding the truth. So not only do you get to test the competences of the person, but it forces them to be a bit more transparent. And so I just mentioned that we're seeing an advancement in the Parliament via these PMQs for the spontaneity, being able to force the government to be more transparent. So let's just pick on one of our favorite topics, cruise industry.
Yep.
You can see now that, and there was a person writing about marijuana. I noticed the government put a list out with some of the things that their priorities was. Lauder was there, conveniently. And don't get me wrong, I'm inclined to agree, but they didn't have the marijuana there. Where you can see right away, any member of Parliament could get up and say, hey, by the way, why was the government not at the cruise industry? Not that I'm feeding them questions, mind you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But right away, you can ask those questions, and the Premier has to respond. And that improves the democracy, that improves the transparency. And I want to make sure to highlight that in color for the general public, because the PMQs in the standing orders is a good thing. And what we should be looking for and trying to see if we can get the same thing happening in this particular case when it comes to the Royal Cayman Islands Police. So we can get that so that we don't have the case with the young man that gets assaulted on the road where he's arrested and it falls into a black hole, nothing happens. Or again, just simply being able to know whether our 8 members, our troops came home. I mean, just really understand that maybe they didn't come home, And
right.
we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we deserve to know. So just wanted to highlight that little bit of color.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure the listening audience are grateful for that explanation. Obviously, one of the goals that we try to do and try to bring on this program is, again, provide some degree of explanation what happens as part of the regular parliamentary meetings, to explain some of the procedural matters, as well as, in this case, certainly some of the new matters added to those procedures for the benefit of the listening audience, so that when they hear them either on the CIG TV YouTube platform or whether they hear the replay on Radio Command, they can have a bit better understanding as to what is happening and, of course, as my colleague just pointed out, the significance of it. You know, you touched briefly on the RCIPS and asking, you know, making the statement really that we aren't really getting a lot of information from the RCIPS as it relates to arguably some of the national interest items. We think, obviously, of the road rage incident that has sort of fallen by the wayside. I don't know whether that's with the legal department now or not. You know, maybe the RCIPS have passed the baton, but we haven't heard any sort of, you know, feedback in terms of where we are with that case, and is it going to go to the courts? Will the young man face prosecution? That is certainly in the public interest. We talk, of course, about the what appeared to be potential murder case of the Miss Julianne Miles found in a burning car there in Bodden Town. All we hear is that obviously they brought in some experts and they're still waiting on reports, but you know, they haven't, you know, gone quite as far as classifying it a murder yet or informing the public what is really taking place, and that's concerning, given the fact that there have been a number of cases that have just fallen by the wayside. Anna Evans, the Englishman Clark who disappeared on the beach, and of course most recently media journalist Andrew Harris. So there are a number of question marks.
If I could, Austin, just thank you. I mean, if I could just spell this out for a little bit more, right? You can see right now, let's pretend, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but let's pretend for a moment that absolutely nothing has happened since this road rage incident. Let's just say it's a file sitting on somebody's desk. And let's just say it's the same thing happened with Andrew Harris. And let's just say it's the same thing happened with something else. We have no idea. We like to give them the benefit of the doubt. But other than mentally massaging ourselves, let's stick with reality. What do we know? We have no evidence that the troops, those 8 people have came home. We have no evidence that anything arguably was done or is being done about the road rage or anything. That's the reality of what we know or don't know. Mm-hmm. But if the commissioner of police knew that every Monday he had to face the public because the media in a public and transparent manner was going to be sitting there, Mr. Walton, there were persons that were concerned about this individual being arrested in the first place. What's the update? If he knows that's the case, I guarantee you the file is not going to sit there.
Right.
Because he's going to be on the toes saying, hey, listen, I need to give answers Monday. I need people in my office here. What's the update on this?
I'm going to face the press. I'll be under fire.
I'm going to be under fire.
Give me some details.
And so I want to implore the public to understand, if we don't push for those sort of mechanisms to happen, what we face is that you might have competent persons in there that's really efficient, just doing what they're supposed to do, but the system will still encourage and harbor persons who are not forced to do it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm sorry to say, but we should lean a little bit to the latter, that if it's not there to provocate you, poke you, prod you to do it, then chances are it's probably not going to be done.
That's right. Yeah? As they say, die on the vine, which is certainly something we do not want.
Yeah.
You know, as I was saying, you know, we talk about these cases which obviously require the RCIPS to use their time. But then there are other issues which we question, well, why are the police even getting involved in it? And one of those issues, you talked about this specifically last week, if not the week before, and that is, of course, the matter raised by the elections office over the overspend by some $200,000 by the PPM at the last election, which fell in breach of the elections law. Again, just to bring the listening audience up to speed, this was something the PPM did not deny. They acknowledged they did it. They offered some excuses that, you know, where the money went and, you know, why the money went there and, you know, the increase in cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they never denied it.
No denying of culpability.
No denying of culpability. They admitted it. They provided the information, as I, you know, said when there was released. They provided the information openly, honestly, and fairly by providing their election expenses, knowing full well that what they had raised had exceeded the limits, but they weren't trying to hide it by any means. They were being honest. But then you asked the question, I thought legitimately so, why are we even involving the police in the first place?
Right.
There's been, no denial. There are no allegations of wrongdoing, more so than the elections law being breached. But we see in the headlines this week that the RCIPS has confirmed that they are working with the elections office to investigate the overspend by the PPM, or People's Progressive Movement, on their 2025 election campaign. And, again, to your point, whether it be traffic offenses, and people say, you never see a cop when you need one in advance of these traffic offenses, where there's no real opportunity for proactive policing to avoid some of these things from happening because, again, from the police commissioner's words, their resources are really stretched to the breaking point, and we have to take him on the merit of his word. Certainly, this is his job. But if we know this, then why add unnecessary work to their workload?
Correct.
When in this case, there is no crime here worthy of investigating.
I don't even know what you're investigating.
A law was breached. The PPM admitted. Find them. Move on.
But I don't even know what you're investigating because, hold on a second. Unless you're somehow saying has a real crime been committed here, what are you going to find that they spent not $200,000 over, but they spent $300,000? It's still going to be the same fine.
Yeah, $25,000.
It's still going to be the same $25,000 fine, which is not, in my opinion, proper. But I think it's immigration that gives you the administrative fines. I don't see why election office just can't say, hey, here's the administrative fine. It's $25,000. Pay up.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't pay up, now I could say you hand it over to Royal Cayman Islands Police to enforce. Maybe.
Yes.
But yeah, again, that's the issue of resources, and again, also something that from a legislative standpoint, somebody should really deal with. I'm not quite sure why that has to be handed over to RCIP. Don't get me wrong, I'm not wrong in RCIP for that because it's in the law. That's the way it is. Yeah. They got to do what they got to do. But really, I don't think they should be on the legislation forced to have to deal with that.
No, indeed, it should. And, if they are involved, then hopefully this will be the shortest investigation in the history of the RCIP.
Solved.
Because really, it's solved. Case solved. The culprits, i.e. those who are in breach, admitted it. So here's your fine.
Right.
Let's move on to other things like stopping the next Honda Fit from wrapping around the next light pole that jumps out in the middle of the road.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. But certainly in this case, we will certainly defend the police in the context of this issue does not warrant police investigation.
Yeah.
And to your point, okay, so it's not 200, maybe it's more. What changes?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
Nothing really changes. And again, nobody would have knew about it if the PPM didn't admit it in the first place.
Right. Talk about honesty.
Real honesty, absolutely. Like I said, there may be a lot of things, but
obviously not dishonest.
Is not one of them in my experience. So 745-2626 is the number. Open mic Wednesday here in the studios. The phone lines will be open all the way until 6:30 tonight. You can also reach out to us on our WhatsApp line. 928-2562 is the number, or you can send us an email at host@straighttalk.ky. Just very quickly in the next 2 minutes, give or take, that we have remaining, a lot of folks in the public were a little concerned when the news broke that the Cayman National Bank was facing a all-out buyout from Republic Financial Holdings Limited, who already owns 75% of the bank, but had put in an offer to acquire the remaining 25%. We see in the news headlines this week that KPMG, who I guess has been hired by the Cayman National Board of Directors to examine the fairness of the offer made by Republic Bank of $7.75 per share, was deemed inadequate from a financial point of view for the remaining shareholders. The bank, a Trinidad Tobago-based financial holding through its wholly owned subsidiary, Republic Bank Trinidad, currently owns, as I said, almost 3/4 of CNB and is seeking to acquire the remaining shares. Shareholders will have a choice now. The deadline for shareholders to decide whether they're going to sell, i.e. accept the $7.75 offer put forward by the Republic Financial Holdings, or if they are going to, reject it, they will have until the 29th of July to make that decision. The decision is entirely in the hands of the shareholders of the Cayman National Board of Directors. So it's not something that, Joe Public can complain about loudly or otherwise. It's really nothing we can do. It's in the shareholders' domain. But $7.75 deemed a little low for the remaining offer. So suggesting the Republic Financial Holdings needs to up their bid if they have any hopes of owning the bank outright. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because over the course of the last few weeks, there have been a number of persons that have approached me directly saying, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I said, well, it's a private commercial decision. What we think, unfortunately, does not matter. It is a question for those persons who own stock and shares in the bank. And certainly, like all businesses, you buy stock as an investment to make money. And obviously, the shareholders have to act in their own best interest. It is 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, and we have to pause, take a short commercial break. But the phone lines remain open, and there will be more Straight Talk still to come. So keep it locked right here to Bobo 103.1 FM. We'll be
more Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
We all work hard to one day buy the house of our dreams. Why wouldn't you protect it? With Saxon, you now have the option to get a home insurance quote online. Avoid the waiting in lines and the traffic. Simply log on to saxon.ky and click to get a quote to get started. At Saxon, we pride ourselves on providing our customers with excellent customer service and convenience. So what are you waiting for? Visit saxon.ky today from the comfort of your home or office to get your quote and protect the things you love. Saxon. Smart insurance.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you can afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3. Gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shedden Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with a care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
Shirts, pants, or linens. When you want them clean, just drop them off at Island Cleaners. Island Cleaners is a full-service dry cleaner, meaning you name it, they clean it. Professional shirt service, fluff and fold laundry, and more. Even drape and area rug cleaning and alterations, from quick hem jobs to resizing dresses. Island Cleaners, your one stop for everything clean. Artco Drive off Shedden Road. Ask about VIP and prepaid discounts.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets, margaritas, and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, mommy!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock Wednesday. See you there.
smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook, either at the Straight Talk page or also on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. The phone lines are open, 745-2626 on this Open Mic Wednesday, as we continue the discussion with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. Well, it is summertime, and that means, well, our young people, or our young adults in particular, are home for the summer, my son included. Yay, very thrilled. And hopefully they're all interning somewhere, being useful and productive, not just sitting on the couch, enjoying mama's home cooking and soaking up the AC at the high summer utility prices.
Daddy's money.
Or spending daddy's money as well, quite right. But for a while there was a little bit of concern that Cayman students, particularly those attending U.S. colleges, might have some challenges getting back to school in September because of an amendment made to the U.S. visa program. But the United States, we see in the news, I think last week, that the United States has in fact resumed U.S. student visa interview appointments for international students, but carry a new requirement now when applying for a student visa or, frankly, any visa to enter the United States. Anyone who's ever gone through the process knows the application process can be considered rather arduous, but it just got even more so by authorities, particularly Homeland Security and Customs and Immigration Services, now looking at social media profiles and requiring applicants to provide access, AKA the government access, should they want, and they will, to review the various social media posts. But for Caymanians, that issue will impact as many as 439 Caymanian students, according to the Ministry of Education. The expanded vetting measures, which were announced by the U.S. State Department back in May, and a separate cable that was released last week, Wednesday, are framed as a national security enhancement. Under the new policy, students must adjust their privacy settings, on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and X to ensure that U.S. consular officers can view their content. According to the cable, originally obtained by Free Press, officers are directed to review not only public posts, but also applicants' broader digital footprints using searchable databases. The cable says consular staff must screen for any online content that reflects, and I quote, hostile attitudes towards our citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles, who advocate for aid or support designated foreign terrorists or other threats to U.S. national security. So on the one hand, yes, the U.S., like every country, has a right to protect their borders from visitors passing through, within acceptable limits. But interestingly enough, when they talk about for any online content that reflects negatively against the founding principles of the United States, and amongst those founding principles enshrined in the Bill of Rights, enshrined in their Constitution, is the right of expression, a.k.a. the freedom of speech. You know, it ranks right there at the top, almost right next door to the right to bear arms. But arguably, a person's, particularly a young person's, social media post, if they are found to be derogatory, even intended for humor and not seriousness, or perhaps they form part of a wider expression against, you know, Western powers, and in particular, the Trumponian style of, you know, government, they could face difficulties getting entry visas into the United States. For a while there, it was a blanket order, and nobody was getting through. But obviously, the negotiations and perhaps common sense prevailed, and, you know, we were able to massage those discussions government to government. So the good news out of this is that, particularly for 439 students in the Cayman Islands who are either attending physical campuses in the U.S. or perhaps even going to school online, previously might have had that their tertiary education plans interrupted. Now we understand those interviews are continuing, and hopefully those students will not be impacted. But again, you know, what it also says on the other side is you should have picked a UK college, buddy. You don't have these issues getting back into the UK. But it is what it is.
Well, I mean, you know, it raises some interesting questions. And again, I imagine they're probably looking for that person that's posting stuff on there like, America sucks.
Yeah.
You know, screw America, whatever, you know, something.
Anti-Semitic remarks.
Yeah, I guess we have to throw that one in there.
Yep.
But, you know, I imagine things like that. And one has the question, you know, if you honestly feel that way, I mean, why do you want to go there? Why do you want to travel there?
Yeah.
Right?
No.
And, you know, it's kind of hard to say to the United States, well, yeah, you just got to accept people even if they think you suck. But what happens about Cayman? Because there's a lot of people down here that thinks that we suck, but we're still here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they go further and say that we suck. But either way.
Much further. Much.
Right,
That's what has me, you know, some moment of pause, because to your point, you know, we have the formal, quote unquote, Instagram and Facebook pages who arguably really go out on the deep end in terms of some of their comments. But, you know, I mean, if I just, you know, think of our children, you know, whilst we as parents try to monitor, AKA police, our young people's social media activity, the reality is they understand it better than we do, and, you know, arguably can post things 2 or 3 different ways under different names, under aliases and whatnot, that could potentially, you know, hamper their ability to continue going to university. We see on May 30th, the coalition led by the American Council on Education wrote a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio warning that the delay in processing visas could prevent international students from arriving in time for the 2025 academic year, and also to continue their ongoing educational process. So it was a very serious and concerning issue when it was first raised, but it seems the furor and the excitement of it seems to have calmed down a little bit. And up until this new policy, the Cayman Islands had been unaffected by, you know, things like Donald Trump's tariffs and, you know, some of the travel bans that were issued. He listed a laundry list of Caribbean islands in our region that weren't considered not friendly and not, you know, going to be granted certain privileges. But again, gratefully, the Cayman Islands was not included in it. But it was only a matter of time before those wide, broad sanctions or, you know, restrictions would somehow at least tickle the Cayman Islands, and in this case, it certainly did.
But it's just challenging because, again, you know, we've heard of things where, again, people are posting. You refer to Caymans as riffraff. You have people that outrightly call the talk shows and tell you that your national dish is completely wrong. You shouldn't be eating turtle, and the list goes on, despite the fact that, how did you word it from the American side, that how it was as a founding state or something? Or
founding principle.
Yeah, well, I'd like to believe that one of the things that we've had from the beginning of time, a memorial, as you refer to it, is turtle consumption, for example.
Yes.
And then there's other things, you know. I mean, the defamatory statements that generalize and come in many different forms and shapes. That Caymanians are lazy, and I'm just curious as to when our government going to get a little bit of a backbone that makes those statements wrong, if not defamatory, if not seditious, at least wrong, and there be some consequences for it, right? Because people like to dismiss it as, oh, it's just the comment of someone. And listen, those little things drop by drop is program in people's mind, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Especially the young, malleable minds.
Yes. Well, Marco Rubio, in response to the Coalition of American Council on Education, reminded them in his response that the U.S. visa is a privilege, not a right, and not extended to anyone. And because it is a privilege, obviously, the U.S. reserves the right to make any changes to it as they deem fit or in the interest of national security.
Yeah, I still have to get mine renewed. Hopefully they'll let this terrorist in, although I'm not a terrorist at all. Donald Trump will see my page and say, let that guy in. Come on.
Well, you see, that's it. That's the other thing about, again, the advantage, I guess, of being from this part of the world or being a British overseas territory citizen. You know, if you have a British passport, you can bypass the whole U.S. visa regime, at least for a while anyway. But I do believe there's some changes that impact that as well, though I can't speak to it because I don't want to get it wrong. But for a long time, I stopped bothering with the U.S. visa because, well, I had a British passport. But, of course, the other side of things is personal, but our flies direct from here to London Heathrow with one little pit stop in the Bahamas. I'd like to see some more flights come in doing that, maybe Virgin. But yeah, for many people in Cayman, we remain unaffected by this issue simply for possessing a British passport.
I never took up the British passport.
For our young people, it's something different, particularly those attending U.S. colleges. So hopefully those 439 Caymanian students who are, in fact, attending school in the U.S. Come the end of summer will have the opportunity to return to school, if for any other reason, just for a small reprieve for the parents who are like, they're almost out of the house.
I'm pretty sure the Caymanians won't have a problem. I think we're one of the only countries on the visa waiver as well, right?
Yes. And again,
there's good boys and good behavior.
That is exactly.
Well, that to the seafarers too.
As we talked about before, it was stated directly when I was in government in particular that, when meeting with the U.S. Embassy and the counselors that were visiting at the time, they had no problem with the Cayman Islands. They had no problem with persons applying from the Cayman Islands. They just felt we didn't have a big enough population to warrant the establishment of a U.S. consular visa office here in the Cayman Islands, hence why Caymanians still have to go to Jamaica if they want to get, a new visa application and have one stamped into their passport. But there's no other reason why Cayman should not have it other than the fact that even at 88,000+, and as we discussed yesterday, that number is probably a lot higher, still isn't enough population-wise to...
You see, I would take a different argument. I would take the argument that it is not the fact that Cayman doesn't have the population to justify it. I would think that perhaps back in the day, there was an issue with flights and a myriad of different things. But if you look at Cayman right now, I mean, to me, it's challenging for me to see, as much as we can love Jamaica, why would I want to be in Jamaica when I can be in the Cayman Islands? I think Cayman Islands right now, from a crime perspective, technology perspective, ease of location perspective, and especially if you can get to the point where you can take flights from just about everywhere else on the planet, why can't you do that? Why would that not be better? But either way, I think really what we need to do is establish, at least for now, some kind of good opportunity for electronic linkage, just like we have remand linkages from the prison to the courts. I think we can do that and actually make it that we can remotely have interviews from the Cayman Islands and at least save Caymanians at the minimum from going over there and having to spend lots of money and get hotels and help boost the Jamaican economy involuntarily.
Yeah.
When in fact we prefer to just stay here and get our visa.
No, indeed.
I'll have to prep for my trip, my friend.
Tell you that, you and I both. 745-2626 is the number in studios. If you've got a comment or a question relevant to any of the topics being raised this evening, by all means, don't be shy.
So I had a cursory review in this thing that you were just talking about with the Cayman National, and for sure you are correct. It seems that they're trying to say we'll give you a $7.75 per share on KPMG, and it says KPMG Bahamas, by the way. That as a person who used to work at KPMG, why is that? Why is this KPMG Bahamas? Why not KPMG Cayman Islands?
Exactly. Good question.
That bothers me. Anyway, maybe KPMG Cayman Islands had a small part to do with evaluation. Who would knows? But I just, that bothers me. Everything is being sent to some other country. We should have that here in Cayman Islands.
Right.
But back to the main point. So they want to buy the shares from shareholders. So the average guy out there, again, trying to laymanize this, is that the average guy out there, you and I, who would have bought shares in Cayman National Bank, those shares have varied at some point in time between $4 and something all the way up to $9.95 or something to that effect. The new foreign company wants to buy your shares now at a maximum of $7.75 US. And KPMG Bahamas is saying that that's inadequate, wholly inadequate. In other words, that is a bit of an undervalue is what they seem to be suggesting, considering that the shares have already went up as much as $9.95.
That's right.
And if you and I had shares, let's say you and I were lucky and we had 1,000, even luckier, had 10,000 shares in the bank, then you could see that you'd be losing a tremendous amount of money if it sold for $7.75 as opposed to $9.95.
Absolutely.
So again, it will depend largely on how those specific shareholders want to respond. Do they want liquidity right now? In other words, do they want to sell out and get the cash that they can get for it? Or is it a case that they believe that somehow if they hold on to this, it will be higher in the end? But then this part about the delisting sounds almost treacherous, right?
Yeah.
It's like it will be removed from the Cayman Islands Stock Exchange. And that to me is, I don't know, that sounds to me like almost a little bit like a threat. You're going to be removing this off the Cayman Islands Stock Exchange, so you're not necessarily going to be getting new parties, and not sure how that's going to work out in terms of the future for the bank and the liquidity. But hey, maybe I'm not reading it correct. Who knows?
No, I think you are reading it correct, and it does raise a few eyebrows, other than the fact that, well, if the Republic Bank of Trinidad and Tobago buy it all, then one would assume it would be listed on their stock exchange. Now, this is an interesting tidbit in terms of this particular transaction. What makes this transaction rather unique is it's not just one commercial entity seeking to buy another commercial entity, albeit in separate jurisdictions within the region. I understand that Republic Bank Trinidad and Tobago, which obviously is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republic Financial Holdings Limited that's actually putting forward the bid, the Republic Bank of Trinidad and Tobago is actually 51% owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So what you have here is a
government buying it.
Government-owned bank trying to buy a private-owned bank in the Cayman Islands. And some have argued, well, why is the Cayman Islands government, offering this, allowing this sale to go through? Why aren't they in turn investing in Cayman National? Well, I just simply say, why would they? I mean, really, if the Cayman Islands government are going to invest in a bank for reasons of whether it be offering, I don't know, better lines of credit, better rates of mortgages and whatnot, they could do this by simply monetizing the bank that they already own, the Cayman Islands Development Bank. But they don't seem to share that vision for it at all. Which, of course, also raised, in my mind, a number of ideas. We've talked about why is it that, the private insurance companies are allowed to cherry pick all the good clients, leaving arguably the government to pick up all of the indigent persons, the persons who are underinsured or persons with no insurance whatsoever, whilst the same private insurers continue to record profit after profit after profit every year. Who are they making this profit on? Off of the backs of Caymanians, you and me in the process. But why do we allow that in our books? Like the bank, CIDB, the government also owns its own insurance company, Synico. So if we were thinking truly outside of the box and we wanted to leverage the government's assets in order to help the economy, in particular, on the one hand, to offer perhaps lower insurance premiums, for example, home insurance premiums, vehicle insurance premiums, certainly home insurance premiums from the standpoint of, what we're paying for annual home insurance premiums against the backdrop of being in a hurricane belt, for example, is viewed by many homeowners as debilitative. Some cases, your annual premiums are $7,000, $8,000 plus, depending on how big your home is. Likewise, it has been argued for years that, the access to credit for young Caymanians in particular, whether they want to buy their first home or young entrepreneurs wanting, the opportunity to invest in their business ideas, they're really not getting much love from the private retail or commercial institutions. But the government has a bank and the government has an insurance company. Mm-hmm. And if they really wanted to, they could leverage these assets, much like we leverage Cayman Airways as part of our toolbox to promote tourism. We could be leveraging these institutions and getting much greater value for money, if you will, for the people of this country. But we don't seem to be viewing this issue that far afield, which surprises me, given the number of formerly financial services professionals or finance professionals that make up both sides of our parliament. And that includes the opposition, but specifically also the government. These persons come from the private sector. They come from financial services. And maybe their loyalties, as we learned yesterday in the whole Britannia versus the Cayman Shores development, that the government really isn't on your side, but perhaps is seeking to defend and or protect their quote-unquote former paymasters by, helping maintain the status quo and not rocking the boat too much. But, the government could do far more. And again, they wouldn't have to, stretch too far because, like I said, they have a bank, they have an insurance company. Synico has long been stated, well, why can't we turn it into a real insurance company? Why can't they take on retail clients and not just civil servants or the indigent so that they can somehow balance the books? They're all legitimate questions. And the only question that, remains unanswered is why not? But so far, we don't seem to have, I think, I like your word, a champion on the side of the government benches who is willing to push this issue into the forefront, into the mainstream, to make it happen, much like we talk about, funding of a national team program and, why do we depend on CIFA when it's really the Cayman Islands government that should be behind it, like they are with other elite athletes. We just don't have a champion within government to take some of these issues a little further past the finish line.
Well, I think that, you raise a very good point. This is, to me, a rather interesting and quite honestly, a serious issue because, first of all, let me just deal with a very simple one. I've always had concern as to how you were able to label Cayman National Bank as a national bank. Because, first of all, you infer from that it's government involved when you hear national. Mm. But either way, that was allowed to happen. But the fact, if what you're saying is correct, that 51% of the bank who's trying to purchase Cayman National Bank is owned by the Trinidadian government, to me, that's very significant. And maybe it will help to highlight the significance of it if I was to change it from Trinidad to make it that it was Russia or China. That has some serious implications because when you have you're in essence saying that a government is controlling to a great extent, to a large extent, overwhelmingly large extent, in some way, shape, or another, the fiscal policies of this bank and the lending, and you're owing the Trinidadian government. Look at it that way. You owe the Trinidadian government. No, you don't owe Cayman National Bank. You owe the Trinidadian government. And what are the implications of that? Mm-hmm. I think it's significant. I mean, we definitely had big kick up about China building something here in Cayman. Oh, no.
China Harbor.
So if it's not a problem, for a foreign government to own a bank in Cayman, then I think we should make that clear. Yeah. And we should then be able to make it clear what governments, which foreign governments are allowed to own and which ones aren't, because that's really what we have here.
But to your point, when we considered both Trinidad and Tobago as well as Barbados is heavily has heavy Chinese investment in their own jurisdiction themselves. So one could argue that the Chinese are inadvertently involved, but I couldn't state that as a fact because I just don't know it. But when you consider the level of Chinese investment that exists in these two Caribbean islands, it is completely plausible. Now, I think if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Trinidad also have oil?
Trinidad that's the big oil place.
Yeah, there you go. And of course,
and nothing to do with, and arguably nothing to do with cruise, which is why when we bring in certain consultants talk about cruise, we just take a pinch of salt. But like I said, it is something. I want to think about that some more and do a little bit more research. But the bottom line of it is, picture, you talked about Cayman having its own bank. CIDB is a government bank, as an example. But what happens if I'm putting that in Honduras? And I'm giving out loans and I'm building buildings and I'm doing different things in that foreign country. You can't say that you're not going to have a significant influence on the fiscal.
Ruminate on it a little further. We have to take a break. We had 10 seconds, and hopefully the counter works. Keep it locked. We're going to check in with the BBC News, but there'll be more Straight Talk next on Bobo FM. You see, every time I try to hit it right as the clock says so, it continues to spin over. But in the next break, it'll cut me off. We don't know what's happening here. We have a new server, but technology is not helping as the clock continues to spin. Well, let's see. 59:03 is what I should be looking at. So the top of the hour clock is not working too well. But keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk next.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News.
The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. President Trump has hailed a commitment from NATO allies to raise defence and security spending to 5% of GDP as a big win for Washington. The figure, agreed at a summit in the Netherlands, is supposed to be hit within the next decade. Mr. Trump said it was also a win for other member states.
When the allies reach this number, it will add more than $1 trillion a year to our common defense, and this is a monument to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
Mr. Trump has long demanded that European nations and Canada take more responsibility for their own security. The head of the CIA has backed President Trump's view that the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities caused severe damage. John Ratcliffe said the agency had new reliable intelligence showing that key Iranian nuclear sites had been destroyed. President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that nuclear enrichment by Iran would remain a red line for the US. But he said he was now hopeful for a comprehensive peace agreement with Tehran. Mr. Trump said US and Iranian officials will meet next week. Meanwhile, Iran's state media say the government has begun reopening airports in the eastern half of the country as life slowly returns to normal. Internet links have been restored and shops are reopening. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is in the Iranian capital.
Tehran is a huge metropolis, some 10 million people. And on the surface, at least, some of the, let us say, normal rhythms of the city are starting to resume. The traffic is getting a bit heavier. But we're told that about 50% of the cafes and shops and government offices are still shut because so many of the Iranians who fled the Israeli and then the American attacks say they don't feel that they can return. They're so relieved that there is a ceasefire, but they're not sure it's going to last.
President Zelensky has hailed a new agreement to set up a special tribunal on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying there must be real steps to make it work and hold everyone responsible to account. Addressing parliamentarians at the Council of Europe, where he's just signed the accord, Mr. Zelensky said that every Russian war criminal must face justice, claiming that Vladimir Putin was one of these.
This crime must be judged clearly and fairly. The world needs an honest historic verdict, so everyone responsible for this war must be held to account.
Mr. Zelensky called for unity among European countries and between Europe and Donald Trump's America to help Kiev prevail against Moscow. World News from the BBC. The US Health Secretary is said to have told the global vaccine alliance, Gavi, that Washington will stop contributing to its work until it considers what he called all available science. In a video message seen by two news outlets, Robert Kennedy Jr. also accused the organization of ignoring safety concerns. He provided no evidence for his claims. Mr. Kennedy is a long-time vaccine skeptic. At least 8 people have been killed in a day of protests across Kenya, held to commemorate other deadly demonstrations 1 year ago. The National Human Rights Commission said the fatalities were all from gunshot wounds and all in provincial counties. It said over 400 people were injured, including demonstrators, police and journalists. Anne Soy is in Nairobi.
There have been caution from different organizations, human rights organizations, diplomats in the country against heavy-handed tactics, basically against the protesters. But what we observed today was no different from what we've seen in the past. In fact, the government ordered local media stations to stop live broadcasting. And when they defied that, we understand that some officials went to their transmitters just outside Nairobi and shut them off.
The Mexican President, Claudia Sheinbaum, has promised legal action to prevent debris from SpaceX rocket launches contaminating her country. She said officials were working out which international laws were being violated. Mexican media have carried pictures of suspected rocket debris washed up on beaches south of the border with Texas. It follows the explosion of a test rocket at the SpaceX base in the US state last week, which sent a huge fireball into the air. Scientists have detected a deep rhythmic pulse underneath part of Africa which could contribute in the far distant future to the continent tearing apart. Their findings reveal the pulse comes from molten mantle rock surging upwards deep underneath the Afar region of Ethiopia, where 3 tectonic plates meet. BBC News.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over YouTube and Facebook with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as we move into our final segment here on the program. Now 7 minutes past the hour, 6 o'clock is the time in studios, and the phone lines remain open at 745-2626 if you want to call in and be a part of the discussion. And just very quickly, Ellio, before going back to the previous topic of the
bank
planned acquisition of Cayman National Bank, I looked outside the window during the break, and it is raining outside.
wow.
So there's a bit of a wet, dry home
liquid
this
sunshine.
evening. Liquid sunshine, but it's nice to see that the forecast that we talked about just about an hour and a half ago is holding steady and true. So
what was the percentage on that? Wasn't a 30% chance of shower then?
40% chance
Was
of
it 40?
showers tonight, and into tomorrow.
Okay.
With the showers specifically, according to the weather forecast, tomorrow taking place in the morning hours. So you definitely want to bring your umbrella just in case. Not quite sure what the afternoon is expected to yield because, of course, as we say, the system that is making its way across our area is expected to drift away by tomorrow afternoon, but tomorrow morning it should still be here. But it is raining outdoors, and I'm delighted to see that the weather forecast has held. And, well, we both love the rain, so God bless the rain. During the break, I just wanted to check because, far be it from us to perhaps, speak incorrectly and give the wrong information. I knew that, the government of Trinidad and Tobago did have a controlling interest in one of the subsidies related to the Republic Bank. But I just want to offer up this very brief clarification. The government of Trinidad and Tobago do not own 51% of Republic Bank Limited, but they do own 51% of the shares in Republic Financial Holdings Limited, which is the parent company of Republic Bank. And arguably, it is the Republic Financial Holdings that has made the offer to buy the remaining 25% of shares on Cayman National. So my previous statement does in fact hold true that arguably the government of Trinidad and Tobago is seeking to buy Cayman National Bank because the government of Trinidad and Tobago owns 51% of the shares of Republic Financial Holdings. And they did so going back to May of 2018. This happened after Clico Investment Bank, which was in liquidation, started its debt repayment to the government, transferring some $42.5 million shares worth some $4.3 billion to the government. The government also owns some 40 million shares of Republic Financial Holdings that it purchased from Clico in 2012 and then transferred that to the Clico Trust Corporation, the administration of the Clico Investment Fund, which was established as a way for Clico bondholders to recoup some of their investment after Clico went bankrupt in 2009. The government of Trinidad and Tobago had to bail out Clico to the tune of $23 billion, a bill taxpayers had to foot. And as such, in that bailout, kind of like the once upon a time, the attempt that I think the Honorable William McKeever Bush tried to bail out First Cayman Bank by, offering some shares, and the government did in fact conduct a bailout in that instance. In this case, the reason how the Trinidad and Tobago government got involved in private banking, if you will, is largely was a bailout. And they had to save their taxpayers, and the only way they can do that was they were going to give them money, but we don't give anything for free. They took shares instead, and now the government of Trinidad and Tobago owns 51% of Republic Financial Holdings Limited, which is the parent company of Republic Bank Limited, and the same company that has made an offer on Cayman National. So everything we said was accurate, just that it wasn't the bank itself that was owned by the government, but by its parent company. So tomato, tomato, but wanted to provide that clarification just in case there were some lawyers out there sharpening their pencil going, hang on, that's not quite correct. Well, we just corrected it. So
yeah, well, I mean, like I said, based on the information that you provide, I think it's a very interesting situation, and I look forward to thinking about that a little bit more. Something to ponder about tonight, Mr. Harris.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think the Compass has done a very good article there, and I would encourage them to seek out the opinion, for what it's worth, seek out the opinion of SEMA.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear what SEMA has to say about it. One, are they aware of the vertical gene there in terms of the ownership with the Trinidadian government? And
I hope they do.
And and what is the position? What is the position of SEMA? What is the position of the Cayman Islands government in relation to a foreign-owned government owning the majority of an institution?
Yes, in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, and bear in mind, the thing is that money is at the end of the day what runs the world, right? Again, I want to give the example, if we go to some other country, again, pick on Honduras, and the government's there and you're lending out significant amount of loans. And bear in mind that you and I sit here with a mortgage, but the bank technically has the ability tomorrow, for what it's worth, to just call that mortgage.
Yep.
This is Mr. Harris, I need the money today.
That's right.
And if you don't pay it today, they get to take the house back. That's part of the contract you signed.
That's correct.
Now, of course, we do depend in large part and hope that that's not the situation, but law is not about what you want to do and feel like doing, it's what you have the power to do. And the contract gives you the power to do that. And I just use that as an example to show you the significant level of control that a person has. If I was able to go into Honduras, reversing the situation, and you're giving out mortgages and you've got, 6,000, 10,000 people on the books and buildings and different things, there's no way you can have that level of financial injection in the country and not be able to influence policies and a lot of other things, as far as I would see it. But either way, somebody else's job is to make that decision. We have the Premier, who's head of financial services, and we have SEMA. I would encourage the opposition to ask the question about this, because I would like to hear what the Premier has to say about sovereignty issues and other things in relation to a foreign country owning the majority of shares or owning a bank, local bank. And I'd like to hear what SEMA's position is. I would really want to hear it. I hope that the media and or the opposition will get some answers.
Yeah. And I just want to jump on something you just stated earlier on, certainly in terms of the contract and what the bank's ability to do. Again, if they wanted to call your mortgage tomorrow and say, listen, you have until 24 hours to pay me everything, or I'm going to take the property, that's completely within their rights. And thankfully, they don't exercise that option. And the reason they don't is the same reason that, local banks aren't necessarily foreclosure happy, because they don't want to be in the real estate business. They're in the banking business. But likewise, it works the same in the reverse. Deposit holders the bank is obligated to pay back depositors and allow them to withdraw their funds on demand. But as we have seen time and time again. Supposed to. But oftentimes what happens is, for example, we've heard the term a run on the bank when, over 51% of the depositors decide to exercise that right to withdraw their funds on demand. The bank will just simply shutter its doors or close its doors and restrict depositors from coming in. Not saying that they're saying, we're not allowing you to take your money. We're just closed for renovations or something so that you don't take the bank under, because, again, that could happen as well.
You can, again, mentally massage yourself to think that you have some negotiations with the bank. But anyone who's deal with the bank
disabuse oneself.
Know that you go in there, and if they give you a 1-page contract or a 250-page contract, you can take your time and read. You can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, you're signing or you're not getting the money.
Yeah.
And people will sign whatever it is. I remember when there was a case at one point where it seems like the bank must have wanted to get some piece of property, and the wife had some incumbent right on that property and therefore got held up in major issues. Then the bank calls everybody in, and getting them to re-sign contracts and taking wives and spouses off the bank can get away with just about whatever it is. I give those simplistic examples to say, let's not underestimate what powers the bank has in terms of lending money and the financial impacts and sovereignty issues in relation to that. So all you have to do now is add on to that. Well, who owns the bank?
Indeed. And that you thought of in just a few moments of just thinking on your feet. And Palamine, when my friend Ellio says, I'm going to ruminate on this notion that the bank that is seeking to buy one of the hallmark banks in the Cayman Islands that has national in its name, knowing full well that the parent company is owned 51% by the government of Trinidad. When my colleague says he's going to ruminate or think on the issue and come back, I can promise you, when you do come back, all I can say is I'm excited already.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely.
I got real goosebumps thinking, what might come from the mind?
What's he going to come up with now?
What's he going to come up with next? Not today,
well, something
but
to think
maybe
about.
Tomorrow.
Something to think about.
Yeah,
well, by the way,
you do have a keen mind, and I appreciate it.
Speaking of that, I did do a little investigation last night. Mind you, I was cautioned by you and the research about the nuclear stuff because we were talking about, well, where's all this nuclear fallout, right?
Yes.
And I was mentioning to you yesterday, I kind of gave the analogy that basically you have a gun that's been, taken apart. You got the barrel here, the spring over here, and but at the end of the day, collectively, potentially what we have is a gun.
Yep.
And we know where the end product is. And so just kind of doing some quick research, not that I think you want to delve into it too much. But from a scientific perspective, apparently you go and you ore up uranium-238 or whatever. And out of that, you're supposed to now try to extract uranium-235. And apparently this is like a very, very small percentage, something like 0.07% of 238 is 235. So you have to extract all of that. And then once you get all that, then supposedly start putting it together and make what they call like a yellow cake. Something to that effect. And then they take it from. So the moment you.
That's right. This is no longer a nuclear energy to power your cities.
And then I say, well, maybe he's working towards a utility company. And then you start taking 235 and now you start making a yellow cake.
Yeah. No. That's not part of a nuclear power plant.
There you go.
That belongs on a warhead, and for that we're going to bomb you into oblivion.
And so it's something like that, but to the effect that it ends up with a final product where you end up with this sort of an ore sphere or whatever, different shapes. But bottom line, it's only at that point in time, that kind of finished piece, that where you end up with compressions or whatever that would cause the explosion.
Yeah. Ellio, I wanted to, and in the few moments that we have left, I wanted to bookend or close up for the moment our fears, which have for a while maintained as it relates to financial services in this country, particular as we have been discussing at great length, the amendment that was made back in February by the previous administration. Our opinion is going to have a derogatory or negative impact on our ability to conduct business and largely our interest from international financiers and the mega rich to say, well, maybe the Cayman Islands aren't as secure as they used to be. So that's going to have some damaging effect. The Honorable Andre Ebanks and his counterpart, the UK Minister of State for the Overseas Territories, seem to be in the news. It says Premier Andre Ebanks' left critical financial services industry is in good standing with the UK government. And I suppose can turn on a dime. But it went on to say that despite a continued clamor for increased echelons of the UK government, understand and appreciate the reforms Cayman has made. While industry figureheads within it went too far in opening up information, others advocate that the UK, Cayman Islands has made all of the effort, and we've always, operated our financial services above board, and we challenge any jurisdiction, least of which those onshore entities, the United States, the City of London itself, to match our standards, but we aren't the one holding the measuring stick. But in a joint statement from Overseas Minister of State for the Overseas Territories, Stephen Doherty, and the Honorable Premier of the Cayman Islands, Andre Ebanks, said that Minister Doherty welcomed the important steps by the Cayman Islands to promote greater corporate transparency, including launching a register of beneficial ownership information in February 2025, making it accessible to those with legitimate interests, such as accredited journalists, academic researchers, and members of certain civil society. Minister Doherty also welcomed Premier Ebanks' commitment to make further enhancements to the beneficial ownership register on a legitimate interest basis with more streamlined processes for multiple search requests, including on fees. They agreed to continue to work for greater cooperation through reciprocal information sharing by competent authorities, including law enforcement. So it seems that we're going to further enhance that information sharing to what it was previous by allowing it to be accessible by competent legal or law enforcement entities, which has always been the case in the Cayman Islands since before the whole beneficial ownership issue started. And I think it goes back to, I'm trying to remember the treaty that started it off.
MLAT.
Yeah, MLAT. Yeah, MLAT was one of them, but I think there was one that goes even further back than that, whose name escapes me right now. But the point is that whilst they say Cayman, quote unquote, is a tax haven and Cayman is the secrecy capital of the world, we have always allowed transparency among official law enforcement based on specific searches. In other words, you had to say, I know Ellio Solomon has a bank account in the Cayman Islands, and it is with institution ABC Incorporated, but we believe he's involved in fraudulent business. That sort of detailed information had to come with the request in order for that information to be released by the government. It wasn't a fishing exercise, you know. Is Ellio in there? Is Austin in there? Just sort of rolling the dice. So you can't do that. Anyway, whilst we were concerned that traditional model was overstepped to include the media, it seems that both the UK and the Cayman Islands are on the same page that, listen, finally, we're in agreement on this issue. And supposedly this is a good thing, and there won't be any further demands to suggest there'll be greater pressure on the Cayman Islands. And I suppose for now we can take that as a comfort, but as we say, a promise is a comfort to a fool, because we have always known that we have these undulations in this whole, tug of war between us and them. And it probably won't take till the end of the year before they have a raft of new FATF regulations and requirements suggesting why Cayman should be on the gray list yet again. I hope that's not the case. But as it stands at the moment, and I say just at the moment on the veracity of what that statement is worth, both sides seem to be satisfied with the actions taken by the Cayman Islands.
How much time do we have, Mr. Harris?
3 minutes, and it's all yours.
Well, I'm going to need more than 3 minutes, so we'll have to pick it up again tomorrow. But, you're going to have the UK saying that they're satisfied because the UK has got what they wanted, right? And that's going to last for a while. This is why we end up on one list today. We're on the black list, and then we're off tomorrow. I get what I want, and then we'll come back tomorrow with another suggestion. And I'm going to just end by saying, I want people to understand, and I know most people are uncomfortable when they hear this, but we need to understand the natural situation when it comes to the relationship between Cayman and the United Kingdom. First of all, you have people that believe that colonialism is over. That only happened in 1884, when they divided up Africa. That applies to Africa and other countries. This does not apply to Cayman. There's absolutely no colonialism going on here. They removed our title as dependent territory citizens and call us overseas territory citizens. So they've changed again, and I will reference it to the Privy Council decision just the other day. They have changed it in label. They've changed it in form, but not in substance. And that is something to understand. When we talked about the beach example a couple of days ago, similar is the situation with the UK. The owners of those beach properties, naturally, and you and I would be doing the same, is going to fight to get as much of that beach as possible for the persons who own those condos. Yeah. And any day that you are too foolish to realize that we have a problem, your challenge is to try to get as much access as you can. And that relationship back and forth has to continue until hopefully we can get some level of equality. And in this particular case, I want to make it clear, if the United Kingdom was concerned about money laundering and the list goes on, they wouldn't come to Cayman. They would start with the City of London, right in their own backyard. That's where they would start if they wanted to deal with money laundering. What they're doing is they created this territory with the financial services, and at the end of the day, they'll be the same ones to destroy it. And that's exactly what they're doing, constricting it one vein, one artery at a time, until at the end of the day, it no longer exists, tying us up like Gulliver in the land of Lilliput, until we're just one dependent borough of the United Kingdom. That's my humble opinion, and I'm happy to discuss it any day, any time.
Well, I will be happy to discuss it with you, but that is all the time that we have for today. Again, reminding you to tune in to Straight Talk each and every weekday evening from 4:30 to 6:30 right here on Bobo 103.1. For more of these type of insightful discussions, largely between my colleague and I, Ray Charles. I'll start calling him now with his new shades on. But that's all the time we have. Enjoy your evening, Cayman.
Yeah.
Stay dry.
Do that.
And we'll see you tomorrow at 4:30 for more Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1.